Hello my friend, it's your boy King Gabriel again, and this is another impromptu video. Today's topic is action versus inaction. And when we think of action and inaction, what we usually think about, at least most people do, are the drives that create action, right? Action is always to do something, to fulfill a purpose, to get something done, right? And inaction tends to be associated with nothing, right? You just sit around doing nothing. However, inaction itself is a state of fulfillment, right? It's universal consciousness. It's how the balance forces, the forces in equilibrium, reside, right? So in inactivity, which seems like nothing, there's a lot happening, okay? Coming down into activity from universal consciousness to divine consciousness, what happens is we separate into two parts. There's the masculine drive and the feminine drive. The masculine drive is a drive of intention, which means it takes that energy as electricity, as an electric impulse. It moves through the brain, as we spoke about. And then the feminine part of it is the part that wants to fulfill the purpose. It takes that intention and wants to fulfill it. It takes it as its purpose to fulfill that intention. For instance, in our world as we see it, men, who usually tend to show forth the masculine impulse, would give their seed, right, which is an intention, to a woman, right? And the woman, who usually displays the feminine drive, would then fulfill the purpose of that by, with her egg, creating a baby, right? That would be a purpose that's fulfilled, but the intention was the seed of the male, right? And they both work together. No one is greater than the other. It's just to fulfill the purpose, the two work together. Now, what looks like man and woman in the world, when you really think about it one level deeper, is two complete beings coming together, right? And when I say that, what I mean is, in the masculine, there is also feminine, right? There are both qualities in each individual because each individual is a whole, right? And in being a whole, what happens is, for instance, if I take on a project, I would have an idea for that project and I would fulfill that project. So then I'm fulfilling both roles, right? And for a woman as well, if she takes on a project, she has an idea and is able to fulfill it. So each individual is a whole, right? However, the idea of masculine and feminine that we have in the world is usually that the male does all the manly stuff and the woman does all this other girly stuff or whatever, right? But that's really silly when we think about it. We're all individual expressions of the whole and we're all capable of doing it, right? Now, there are certain functions that are fulfilled in a man's body and functions that are fulfilled in a woman's body. And so I just wanted to touch on that to clarify that thinking, because we are all fully franchised expressions of universal consciousness. And we carry that out within divine consciousness, which is what we're in, right? Now, why I brought that up is this. We get mad usually at people's actions. We get mad at what people do. No one gets mad at a brick. No one will just be walking by a building, see a brick in a building and be like, I hate this brick. No, that doesn't really happen, right? But people can get mad at a tree, for instance. You look out a window and a tree grew up and blocked your view. You could be mad at that tree, right? Because that tree took an action. It is growing towards the sun. And its action somehow gets in the way of your fulfillment of what you would want, which is to have your view of the entire waterfront or whatever, right? And that tree's in your way. So then you're mad at the tree, which is really funny either way. But the point is this. We do not get mad at things that are still in our perception. And that's only still in our perception, as I said, because everything vibrates. Everything's moving always. But either way, we do not get mad at the things we perceive to be still, but we get mad at things that take action. And it's not the action being right or wrong, it's whether the action conflicts with what our intention is. Because if it conflicts with our intention, then it's crossing our path. If you're driving down the street and someone cuts in front of your path, most of the times, 9 out of 10 times, you'll probably be like, what? Like, why? Why would you do that? You didn't see me here? You know, most of the times, that's what would happen, right? And that's because they're cutting off whatever your intention is, which is to be where you have to be on time and you headed straight there. And so that's when we have conflict in this world. And that's where the ego arises, really. The ego arises on the fact that if I was an individual doing everything on my own and there was nobody else, there would be no problem with the ego, because I would be able to do everything without conflicting with anyone else. But the conflict comes up where one person has an intention and another person has an intention that needs to cross your path in some way. And if it's crossing your path in some way, then it's causing you a little turbulence. So you tend to not like that. And that's all that really happens in our environment. It's not that people are deliberately wanting to hurt others or anything. It's just that because all of us have impulses to get things done, that feminine drive of getting things done tends to conflict with other people's getting their things done. Right? So that's where the drives really conflict and where we start to have problems. Right? But it's not something that's unsolvable. It's just that we have to look at it the same way as we would look at a brick. A brick is fulfilling its purpose by being a brick, being in that building, holding that structure together. Lovely. But a person is doing the same. They're fulfilling whatever their purpose is. As a unit, if we look at humanity or divine consciousness, everyone within it as a unit, we would start to see that everyone is doing his own thing. And if we can just realize that even though they might cut across us temporarily, they're fulfilling their purpose, then instead of being angry at them, instead of killing them in our minds, which is what most people do when things like that happen, we can bless them. We can bless them and be like, okay, you need to be somewhere right now. It's all good. All right, cool, yeah. Come on. Just take the space. You need, help them out. And that's a different way of looking at things. And what it does is it puts us in a greater state of peace and keeps us on intention so that we don't go off killing somebody in our minds, which really and truly, if you think about it, in the spiritual world, mental thoughts are activity within the spiritual world, because they either move you closer to yourself and what some would say is the creator or the source of being, or they move you away from, if they're not in the same vibrational alignment with that thing. So thoughts are action, right? Funny enough, some people think you could think of doing things and it's alright, but no, those thoughts have an effect on you and on other people as well, because it's spiritual movement, it's motion. Whereas action in the world, as we see it, seems to be a big deal, but that's just the feminine purpose being fulfilled. And it is action as well, because you can't hurt a body in that world, or hurt someone else as a body in that world, but it's not really the end of it all, because a new intention can always be fulfilled and help that situation once again. Right? So it's understanding that and realizing that if we can curb our minds in that instant that those things occur, then we're keeping our minds clear, right? And we're back in a state of harmony, right? Seeing others just as we see ourselves. And then we're just in a peaceful state, and it's not the easiest thing to do. I'm not going to say that it's the easiest thing to do, right? But it is simple, because it's just about being able to see that other, not as we see a brick per se, but being able to see the positive or the light or the goodness in that being as well. Seeing that maybe their situation might be a bit rough, but we can still think of them in that way, right? So difference, really, when we think about difference, it's just about activity. Difference is about the activity of the mind of that being, right? That's the only difference. And the intentions continue to come through, flowing through, to help us fulfill whatever our original intention is. There's no good or bad, right or wrong, really. That's a personal situation. Good or bad, right or wrong is according to the integrity of the individual who is actually setting out to have an experience, right? If something fulfills your intention, you see it as good. If it doesn't, you see it as bad. For instance, water. You can drink water and you can be hydrated, or you can leave water and let it pile up and then somebody drowns in it and then it would be seen as bad. But it itself is not good or bad. It's just water, right? The only difference is that because of the intention that we have, which is to thrive, to live, to be well, to be healthy, a pile of water that drowns somebody in a pool, well, they shouldn't, it would be a deal, right? And that's the point of it. But water itself is not bad or good, right? So one more thing I want to touch on with this topic. Pleasure, as we see it, is an internal factor. Right? And that pleasure, when you really think about what pleasure is, this is what makes a being feel good. Pleasure comes directly from the source of being. If we look on the outside, right, which is the feminine drive usually getting things done around us, and we look on the outside to feel that pleasure, then what we're doing is reversing the order of things. Because our situations could be going bad, and if they're going bad, we would feel we would not feel pleased, we would feel out of sync. Whereas, if the situation is going good, we will feel pleasure, but that won't be the real sense of pleasure. It would be pleasure based on a sensation, based on the body senses, based on what we see, feel, touch, tell, or taste, smell or taste, right? And so, if we can rely on the pleasure within, which is the pleasure that's coming through and as our being, from that universal consciousness which created us in the first place, or from where we draw our life, in a sense, our life force, we can then be in a state of receptivity, right? And become, in a sense, kind of feminine, yeah, but not feminine in the traditional sense. Feminine is receptive to the idea and being willing to fulfill the purpose of that idea. So man, the being, is sort of, when you think of it, a feminine entity. And why it's a feminine entity is because it's willing to fulfill a purpose that came from an intention for that individual to fulfill, right? Yet, because we are a united being, there is still masculine involved. It's a complete being, right? And it's good to understand that, because then we don't have to fight with others about what masculine or feminine is. All this stuff about who's straight and all that stuff and gay and all that doesn't make a difference. It makes absolutely no difference. The only difference it makes is in productivity and reproductivity, because a man and a man cannot have a child, a woman and a woman can't have a child without help, right? So sensations are lovely, but the real pleasure is much better if you would turn within for that pleasure, because it is reliable. It will always be there, and you'll be in pleasure even if your situation seems to not allow it. And that is how you'd be able to bless people instead of being upset about it. Your personal perception shifts. And that, my friend, is true spirituality. It's growth of the being by taking personal responsibility and actually linking directly to that source for continual growth, continual expansion, continual givingness, continual love. So, that's really all I wanted to say today. I hope that helps you in some way, and you can choose the drive that pleases you and moves you forward in your experience towards expressing the source of your being as you really are. Eternal love and infinite peace.